No takers? That's what 10 years gets you.
No, baby. We're not in trouble. We're just gonna go sit down.
Ma'am, there's a table by the window. My name's Matt. Let me see. The help's got a soft spot. Go on, there's your taker.
The ballroom glittered like it had been built to make small people feel smaller. Under a chandelier the size of a wagon wheel, Daniel Bennett lifted his glass, tapped it with a fork until the laughter died, and said the thing he had been saving all night. 10 years married, and I'll be honest with you, I'll wager any man here can take her home tonight. She's yours. Nobody will. The room laughed the way rooms do when the powerful man makes a joke. Claire stood in the middle of it, her daughter's small hand in hers, and did not move. And across the floor, a man in a burgundy porter's vest set down his tray without a sound. Not one of them bothered to look at him. Not one of them knew he owned the marble under their shoes. Before we go on, I'll say this once, and softly. These stories are told for anyone who has ever been made to feel like furniture in their own life. If that's ever been you, walk to the end of this one with me. Now, let me take you back an hour, before the glass was ever raised. Claire had spent the afternoon getting ready in a bathroom that wasn't hers, because the hotel suite was Daniel's territory and he liked her out of the way while his colleagues arrived. She pressed her own dress with a travel iron balanced on the edge of the tub. It was a green dress, 3 years old, let out twice at the seams, and she smoothed it over her hips the way a woman does when she has made peace with a body other people whisper about. She was not ashamed of herself. She had learned, over the long, slow years, that shame was a thing other people tried to hand you, and you did not have to take it. She had married Daniel at 23, when he was still hungry and grateful, and looked at her like she was the good thing in a hard year. Somewhere in the decade after, the looking stopped. He climbed. Regional accounts, then a director's chair, then dinners she wasn't invited to. She learned to read his moods from the sound of his key in the door. She learned to make herself quiet, to make herself smooth, to make herself gone from a room before he wished her gone. 10 years, and she had become a set of habits designed to keep a man from being annoyed by her. Their daughter, Ellie, was 6 that spring. All knees and questions, with her mother's stubborn chin. There had been no sitter that night, or rather, Daniel had waved the idea off, said let the girl see how grown people celebrate, though Claire suspected he simply hadn't wanted to pay one. So Ellie came in her Sunday shoes, holding a coloring book she'd been promised she could use if she got bored. Claire had knelt in the corridor and fixed the child's collar and told her, "You be good, and if you get sleepy, you tell me, and we'll find a chair." She did not yet know how much that word, chair, would come to matter. They rode the elevator down at 8:30. In the polished doors, Claire caught her own reflection. A full-figured woman in a green dress, a little too much hope in her eyes for a room she already knew wouldn't want her. She fixed the hope. She put it away where it couldn't be used against her. The doors opened onto the ballroom, and the warm noise of Daniel's world rolled toward her like weather. It took the party all of a minute to arrange itself, so that Claire stood slightly outside every circle. She knew the choreography, a conversation that closed like a door as she approached. She fetched Ellie a glass of lemonade, stood near a pillar, and became, by long practice, invisible. Near the service doors, a porter moved through the party filling glasses and clearing plates. He wore the hotel's burgundy vest, and he was the kind of man the guests looked straight through. Middle years, quiet hands, a small nick of gray at the temple, a cuff faintly stained with ink as though he'd been writing figures before he pinned on the vest. In his breast pocket, folded small, he carried a scrap of paper the way other men carry a watch, a child's drawing, crayon gone soft at the creases. His name was Matthew Calloway. He had been in this ballroom 10,000 times, though never once as a guest. He worked the floor most nights it was booked. It steadied something in him to carry a tray. It reminded him of the year he'd had nothing to carry at all. Matt noticed Claire the way you notice a lamp still burning in a house everyone's left. He saw the way she'd positioned herself. He saw the child. He saw the husband holding court by the ice sculpture, loud in the particular way of a man who is afraid, underneath, that he is smaller than his suit. Matt had learned to read rooms from the bottom of them. From the bottom you see everything the top is too pleased to notice. Daniel had been drinking since the toasts began, and drinking made his cruelty efficient. A younger colleague asked, half joking, where his lovely wife had got to, and Daniel's mouth did a thing that wasn't a smile. "Around somewhere," he said. "You'll know her. She's hard to miss." One of the wives laughed too quickly. Claire, 20 feet off, heard it land and kept her face very still. Ellie tugged her sleeve and asked if it was almost cake, and Claire said, "Soon, baby, soon," and hated the small crack in her own voice. It went the way those things go, a comment, then a worse one, each testing the water and finding it warm. Someone toasted the happy couple, and Daniel raised his glass and said, "To 10 years. Heaven knows I've earned a medal." Laughter. He was warming to his audience. Claire watched him find the shape of the thing he wanted to say, the way a man tests the weight of a stone before he throws it, and she felt the old dread go cold and specific in her stomach. She reached down and squeezed Ellie's hand, more for herself than for the girl. "You want to know the truth?" Daniel said, loud now, to the whole room. He gestured with the glass toward the pillar, toward Claire, so that heads turned and the party finally, fully, looked at her. 10 years, and I'll tell you what she's worth on the open market." The room went quiet in a way that was worse than laughter, an eager hush. The hush of people who want to see, and don't want to be blamed for it. "I'll make it a wager," Daniel said. "Any man in this room, go on, take her home tonight. She's yours, free and clear, and I'll shake your hand and thank you. Any takers?" He swept the glass in a slow arc. "No? Nobody? See." He turned back to his colleagues, satisfied, a man who had proved his point. That's what 10 years gets you. The silence held for one endless second. Then a nervous chuckle broke it, and another, and the room let itself off the hook by treating it as a joke, because the alternative was to feel what had just been done to a woman standing 10 feet away with her child's hand in hers. Claire did not cry. That is the part I need you to understand. She stood in the full light with 40 people looking at her, and she lifted her chin the smallest fraction, and she did not give them the tears they were bracing for. Inside, something old and load-bearing quietly gave way. Outside, she was a woman in a green dress, refusing to fall down. Ellie looked up at her mother's face, not understanding the words but understanding the temperature, and her lip began to tremble. "Mama," she whispered, "are we in trouble?" And Claire knelt right there on the parquet, in front of all of them, and cupped the child's cheek and said, "No, baby. We are not in trouble. We are just going to go sit down." She would get her daughter to a chair. That was the whole of her plan. Get the girl to a chair and keep her own back straight while she did it. Across the room, Matthew Calloway set down his tray. He did it without hurry and without drama, laying it on a side table with the same care he gave everything, and then he crossed the floor. The worn path his own feet had traced across that parquet over the years led him straight through the middle of the party, and people stepped aside for the porter without registering why. He stopped in front of Claire, who was still kneeling, and he did the one thing no one in that gleaming room had thought to do. He crouched down to her level so she wouldn't have to look up at another man. "Ma'am," he said, quiet, just for her. "There's a table by the window with a good view of the garden lights. My name's Matt. I'd be glad to seat you and your daughter, if you'd let me." He was already shrugging off the plain dark coat he wore beneath the vest, worn at one elbow, and he held it open. "It's cold by that window," he said, which was not entirely true. "And you came dressed for a warmer room than this turned out to be." The offer sat there in the hush. Somewhere behind her, Daniel's voice found its footing again. "Well, look at that," he said, delighted. Cruel, loud enough for everyone. "The help's got a soft spot. Go on, sweetheart. There's your taker. Enjoy the ride." The laughter came back, meaner now, because a target had been handed to them, and cruelty loves a target. Matt did not so much as glance at them. Here is what Claire couldn't have known. Matt could have ended it in one sentence. He could have stood up, turned to that braying room and said the words, "This is my hotel. This is my floor. Then get your coat. You will not speak to a guest that way in my house." He had every right and every power. The general manager was a telephone call away. The whole gleaming machine answered to him. One sentence, and Daniel Bennett would have been a small man being escorted to the curb. He didn't say it. He held the coat open and waited, patient as a fence post, while the room laughed at him. Years ago, in a room a great deal like this one, under lights just as gold, Matt had been the one on the floor. He'd been a young man in a cheap jacket, accused of something he hadn't done, and when he'd stood up and said the true thing plainly, the room had looked past him to a man in a fine suit who said the false thing smoothly, and the room had believed the suit. He had learned that night that truth, spoken by the wrong mouth, weighs nothing at all, so he had stopped announcing himself. He let the truth arrive on its own legs, in its own time, and until it did, he simply stood where he meant to stand and let them laugh. Laughter costs a patient man nothing. Claire looked at the coat. Then she looked at the man holding it, at the ink on his cuff, and the wear at his elbow, and the steadiness in his face that asked for nothing. And because her daughter was watching, and because she had to teach that girl something in that terrible room, she rose, and she let him settle the coat around her shoulders. It was warm from his back. The warmth of it against her cold arms undid her more than any of Daniel's words had, and she had to blink hard at the garden lights beyond the window before she trusted herself to speak. "Thank you," she said. "The table." "Yes." He led them to it, a small round table by the tall dark windows, away from the crowd but not hidden by it, set where a woman could sit with her dignity in full view rather than skulking in a corner. He pulled out her chair. He did not pull out the second, small chair, because there wasn't one. The table was set for 2 grown guests, and Ellie was left standing, uncertain, her coloring book clutched to her chest, too old to sit on a lap and too little to disappear. That was when the second man came. He wore the same burgundy vest, a night porter named Reuben, a broad, quiet man Matt had hired the winter his own troubles ended, though Claire couldn't have known that either. Reuben crossed from the service door carrying a proper child's chair, a small padded one from the private dining room upstairs, and he set it down at the table beside Claire without a word. He straightened it. He gave Ellie the smallest nod, the kind grown men give children they've decided to respect. And then he was gone again, back into the seam of the room where the working men lived, having said nothing at all and meant everything. Ellie climbed into the chair and opened her coloring book, and the ordinary sight of a child settling to color did something to the air at that little table. It made a family shape where a moment before there had been a spectacle. Claire watched her daughter choose a crayon and felt the strangest thing rise in her. Not gratitude exactly, something fiercer. The feeling of being, for the first time in longer than she could name, treated as though she were worth the trouble of a chair. Matt did not sit with them, not at first. He brought a pot of coffee and 2 cups and set them down, and he asked the girl, gravely, whether she preferred to color the sky blue or purple, and Ellie considered this as a serious question and said purple, and he said that was the correct answer. The sky was purple more often than people admitted. You just had to catch it at the right hour. He said it the way a man says a thing he has said to another child, in another kitchen, more times than he could count. Ellie laughed. It was the first honest sound at that table all night. Claire pressed her fingers to her mouth. Across the room, Daniel had turned his back on the whole thing, which was its own kind of dismissal. The woman not even worth watching once she'd been given away. His colleagues had drifted to fresh drinks. The party reassembled itself over the wound in the floor, and went on, and that too Claire understood. The world closes over you fast. You learn not to expect it to hold still and mourn. "You can sit," Claire said finally, when Matt returned to check the coffee. "You've done more than enough standing." It surprised her, the small authority in her own voice. She hadn't used it in a room like this in years. He sat. For a while neither of them spoke, and the silence was not the awful, eager silence of the wager, but an easier kind, 2 people letting the noise go by. Then Claire said, looking at the garden lights and not at him. "You should know I'm not going home with you." Whatever he said, "I'm not a thing to be won." She kept her chin level. "I've spent 10 years being handed around a room. I won't do it again tonight, not even to a kind man. I would rather sit alone at this table than be one more story about a woman someone took home." "I know," Matt said. He said it without a flicker of offense, as though she had told him the time. "I didn't come over to win you. I came over because a man was throwing stones, and nobody was standing between him and the child." He turned his coffee cup a quarter turn on its saucer. "You don't owe me the rest of your night. You don't owe me the coat. Keep it or leave it on the chair. But it's yours to decide, not his, and not mine either." That was the sentence that reached the place in her the wager had broken. Not owing anyone. Deciding for herself, she looked down at the dark coat around her shoulders, warm from a stranger's back, and she understood that if she left it on the chair, she'd be walking out cold into her own life again, to prove a point to men who weren't watching. And if she kept it not because a man offered it, but because she chose the warmth. The difference was the whole difference. It was everything the last 10 years had ground out of her. "I'll keep the coat," she said, "because I want it. Not because he gave me away, and not because you gave it, because I'm cold and I want it." Her voice shook once and then held. "That's mine to say. That's yours to say," Matt agreed, and something in the room's long-held breath eased, though the room itself didn't know it yet. If you have ever sat at a table like that one, on the wrong side of a room's laughter, and kept your back straight anyway, then this story already belongs to you as much as to her. Stay with me a while longer. The best of it is still coming. Ellie held up her page, a purple sky over a lopsided house, and both adults admired it with the seriousness such a thing deserves. And for a moment, the table by the window was simply 3 people and a child's drawing, and the glittering cruelty behind them might have been happening in another country. Claire poured herself coffee with a steady hand. She had stopped waiting to be rescued somewhere in the last few minutes. She had rescued herself, one chair and one coat, and one sentence at a time, and that was better. It was into that quiet that the doors at the far end of the ballroom opened, and a change came over the room the way cold comes under a door. The man who entered was old and silver-haired and dressed with the plain excellence of real money, and he moved through the party as if he'd walked it 1,000 times, which he had. Harold Ashford had managed the hotel for 30 years. The guests didn't know his face, but the staff did, and their sudden straightening rippled outward until even Daniel's crowd sensed that someone who mattered had arrived. Ashford's eyes swept the ballroom once, professional, cataloging, and stopped at the small table by the window where a porter sat drinking coffee with a woman and a child. He crossed the whole length of the floor to reach it. He did not slow at the important men or the loud ones. He came to the table and stopped, and then Harold Ashford, 30 years the master of that gilded room, inclined his head and said, "Clear enough to carry, Mr. Calloway. Forgive the interruption, sir. The Ridgeway contracts are on your desk for morning, and the staff wished me to ask whether tonight's booking has met with your approval. It is your house, after all." The word house hung in the gold light. Heads turned. A glass paused halfway to a mouth. Daniel Bennett went very still with the particular stillness of a man watching the floor tilt beneath him. "Everything's been fine, Harold," Matt said, unhurried, still turning his cup. "Except one guest forgot how to speak to people. We'll not be renting to his firm again." He said it mildly, without triumph, the way you'd note a leak in a roof. Then he looked up at Ashford. "This is Mrs. Bennett. She and her daughter are my guests for the rest of the evening. See they've anything they need, and have a car ready whenever they choose, and only whenever they choose." You could hear the understanding move across the room like wind across a field. The porter they'd all looked through, the man Daniel had jeered at, offered his wife to as a joke, mocked about the going rate. That man owned the marble, the chandelier, the ice sculpture, the very glass Daniel had raised to humiliate her. Someone laughed once, sharp and involuntary, and cut it off. The colleagues who'd toasted Daniel an hour ago found urgent reasons to study their shoes, and Daniel himself, red-faced, started forward with a strangled, "Now hold on. Claire, sweetheart, I was only—" "You were only," Claire repeated. She stood. She did not shout. She stood in the burgundy-lit room in her 3-year-old green dress and a stranger's warm coat, and spoke in a voice level and quiet, each word set down like a coin on a counter. "You wagered me in front of our daughter, Daniel. You offered me to a room like a thing you were tired of owning. And the only person in this whole party who treated me like a person was the man you thought was beneath you." She took Ellie's small hand. "I'm going to sit back down and finish my coffee. And in the morning, I'm going to call a lawyer. You don't have to walk me out. Nobody's giving me away tonight." Ashford, without being asked, had already stepped smoothly to Daniel's elbow, and 2 staff in burgundy had appeared at the edges of things the way they do in a well-run house, and Daniel Bennett understood at last that the room had turned all the way over, and he was the one on the floor now. He was walked, not thrown, toward the doors. Matt would not make a spectacle even of a man who deserved one, and the party closed over the space where the powerful man had stood, exactly as it had closed over Claire an hour before. The world closes fast. It had simply, this once, closed on the right person. Claire sat back down. Her hands were shaking now that it was over, the way they hadn't dared to while it mattered, and Matt pretended not to see, and pushed the sugar toward her daughter, and asked Ellie whether the purple house had a dog, because every good house had a dog. Ellie said it did, a brown one, and bent back over the page. When at last the party thinned and the girl had fallen asleep in the small padded chair with her crayon still in her fist, Reuben came without being called and carried the sleeping child gently to the car. In the leaving, in the tiredness of a long night ending, nobody noticed the coloring book left open on the table, its purple sky drying under the last of the chandelier light. You might think that was the end of it, the villain undone, the truth revealed, the good man rewarded. But a life is not a ballroom, and the morning after a rescue is still only a morning, with rent in it, and a lawyer's fee, and a 6-year-old who wakes up asking questions. The weeks that followed were the harder, quieter story, and they were the story that mattered, because they belonged entirely to Claire. She filed the papers on a Tuesday. She found a small apartment above a bakery, 2 rooms that smelled of yeast at dawn, and she hung the borrowed coat on a nail by the door, because she had not decided what returning it would mean. Daniel did not go quietly into being a smaller man. His lawyer sent letters on heavy paper, and one of them reached into the years before the marriage, to a season Claire had spent broke and desperate, and had never told anyone about. A threat dressed as a settlement, a way of saying, "I still know how to make you ashamed." She read it twice at the kitchen table, and her old habit rose in her, the habit of making herself smooth and gone. Then she looked at the coat on its nail, and she did not make herself gone. She wrote back 3 sentences and mailed them herself. The town, in its small way, had opinions. One of the colleagues' wives called under the excuse of concern, and spent 20 minutes fishing for Daniel's version, which was already traveling, polished and false, through the rooms Claire no longer entered. "People are saying you left him for the hotel man," the woman said, delicately cruel. For the money, Claire held the receiver a moment and looked at 3 coins on the windowsill, all the cash in the apartment that day. "Tell them what you like," she said. "I left him for a chair," and she hung up, and did not explain, and let the sentence be as strange and true as it was. It was Ellie who brought her back. The child asked, every few days, about the purple sky man and about her coloring book, which she had loved and lost, and finally, on a gray Saturday, Claire could no longer put it off. She would return the coat and collect the book and be done with the whole gilded chapter. She walked the 6 blocks to the hotel, with the coat folded over her arm, and at the tall glass doors she stopped, her hand not quite reaching the brass, listening to the low hum of a world she had only ever entered on someone else's arm. Then she opened the door herself and went in. She found him not in an office but on the floor, in the burgundy vest, restacking chairs after a luncheon, sleeves rolled, ink on his cuff. It undid something in her to see it, a man who owned the building choosing, still, to carry the weight of it in his own hands. "You don't have to do that," she said. "No," Matt agreed, setting a chair square. "That's rather the point." She held out the coat. He looked at it and did not take it. "You keep leaving me things," she said, and only then remembered the coloring book. He crossed to a shelf behind the front desk and brought it back. Ellie's book, kept safe these 3 weeks. The purple sky flattened careful under something heavy so it wouldn't curl. "Why did you keep it?" she asked, and Matt, who did not announce himself, answered her sideways, the way he answered everything. He drew from his breast pocket the folded scrap he'd carried all that night and every night, a child's drawing, crayon worn soft at the creases, a purple sky, a lopsided house. "My daughter drew this one," he said. "Her name was Grace. She's the reason I know the sky is purple if you catch it at the right hour." He said the word was so gently it took Claire a moment to feel its edge. "I lost her and her mother the same winter, 8 years back. That was the year I had nothing left to carry. A man named Reuben pulled me off the floor of a life I'd stopped meaning to keep. I gave him a vest when I got back on my feet. I keep the floor because up in an office I forget what it cost me to stand up." Claire sat down without being asked, in one of the chairs he'd just stacked and unstacked for her, and for a long moment neither of them filled the silence. She had come to return a coat and be done, and instead she had walked straight into the reason a stranger had crouched to her level in a room full of cruelty and known, without being told, exactly how much a child needs a chair of her own. "That's why you didn't leave her standing," she said. "Ellie." "A child should never be the thing there's no room for," he said. "I learned that too late to matter for mine, so I make it matter for the next one." She did not fall into his arms. "I want you to know that." There was no swelling music, no kiss over the folded coat, no woman rescued into a happier ownership. There was a widower and a woman just now teaching herself the shape of her own name, sitting in a quiet room, learning that they had each been standing at the bottom of a gilded place, holding a purple drawing, longer than either had guessed. Whatever might grow between them would grow slow, over ordinary Saturdays, and would be Claire's to decide, one chair and one true sentence at a time. That was the only way it would ever be worth having. She kept the coat that day too, because she wanted it, she told him, and he only nodded, because he understood the difference better than any man alive. She took Ellie's coloring book home, and on the walk back through the gray afternoon, she did a small, unremarkable thing that would have been impossible to her a month before. She looked up at the sky, low and bruised over the rooftops, and saw that it was, in fact, faintly purple, and she laughed out loud on the empty street at no one, and did not put the feeling away where it couldn't be used against her. He walked them home the first time on a Thursday, and she nearly told him not to, out of the old fear of what a neighbor might make of it. She let him instead. Ellie skipped ahead to count the cracks in the sidewalk, and for a block neither adult spoke, and then Claire said the thing she had started to say 4 times and swallowed. The letters from his lawyer stopped. She kept her eyes on her daughter's small back. "Whatever I wrote, it landed. I keep waiting to feel afraid of him, and I can't find it anymore." Matt slowed his step to match hers. "That's not the money going quiet," he said. "That's you. He only ever had the size you were willing to give him." She thought about that the rest of the way, and at the bakery door she did not ask him up, and he did not expect it, and the not asking was its own kind of promise. He tipped his head, said goodnight to the girl by name, and walked back toward his floor in the last purple light. The evenings after came slowly and on their own legs, the way true things do. Ellie tore a fresh page from the book each visit and brought it to leave on the front desk of the hotel, and Reuben, who had learned from Matt how to say everything by saying nothing, taped each one to the wall of the porter's room until the wall was a sky of lopsided houses. Matt walked them the 6 blocks home some evenings and not others, never presuming, always leaving the choosing to her. Claire started, once or twice, to say something that mattered, and stopped, because some true things need to be almost said many times before they can be said. He never pushed. A patient man knows the difference between a locked door and a door that hasn't finished opening. Daniel's heavy letters stayed stopped, and the town found a fresher story, and the bakery below her filled her rooms with the smell of bread every dawn, and slowly the shape of a life she had chosen replaced the shape of a life she had survived. On a bright Saturday near the end of that spring, she stood in the porter's room looking at a whole wall of purple skies. Her daughters and one other, older, its crayon worn soft. Grace's, taped up in the middle where Matt could see it when he came off the floor. "Why did you never just tell people?" she asked him at last, the question she'd carried since the ballroom. That night, you could have stopped all of it with one word. "I know," he said. "Somebody told the truth in a room like that once, and I was the room, and I believed the wrong man." He looked at her steadily. "I decided a long time ago, I'd rather be believed by what I do than what I say. And you didn't need me to save you, Claire. You were already standing. I only carried you a chair." She thought about the 10 years she had spent being told, in 100 quiet ways, that her worth depended on whether a man in a good suit found her worth keeping. And she thought about a porter with ink on his cuff, who had knelt to her level in the one room built to make her feel small. "Dignity doesn't check your bank balance on the way in," she said, half to herself, and he nodded slowly, because it was the truest thing either of them had said all spring. It never did. Some people just take longer than others to figure out who had it all along. Ellie came running with a new page then, a purple sky over 2 houses now instead of 1, with a brown dog between them, and she held it up for both of them to admire, with the seriousness such a thing deserves. Claire did not reach for Matt's hand, and he did not reach for hers, but they stood close enough that their shoulders nearly touched over the child's drawing, and neither of them stepped away. And that was more than enough for a spring that still had a whole summer coming behind it. She left the new page on the desk on her way out, the way Ellie always did. A reason, small and specific and purple, to come back. These stories are made with love, for everyone who has ever been made small in a room full of people and stood up anyway. If this one stayed with you, subscribe and stay for the next. That is all I ask.